What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of a Thinking Man's podcast on the Muscle Media Network. For everybody watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with a friend, leave us a comment, ring the bell so you're notified every time we drop a new video. As always, this episode is brought to you by Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. Train hard, die strong. Thank you to Chris again, as always, for supporting the channel, supporting the show. Today, Tommy and I are joined again by our buddy Joey Cavalier. Joey, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for joining the
Good.
show.
How you guys doing?
Good, good. And we're going to be talking more training. We always love talking training, especially when Joey comes on. We appreciate hearing your perspective on things. So I think at this point, the three of us are kind of graduated into like the older head category of bodybuilding at this point. So I think it'd be a good topic to discuss different techniques, philosophies, whatever you want to talk about, or just examples within our bodybuilding careers of when our outlook on something might have changed, or if it's flip-flopped, gone back and forth, how a perspective might have evolved. So, Joey, when I say that, does anything come to mind right away?
Yeah,
It can be
definitely.
anything. Training, bodybuilding in general.
Like when I first started training, like it was just like everything was till failure. Squats were till failure. Like I was dumping bars nonstop, deadlifts until failure. So it's come a long way. You can't do that forever. Obviously, you're going to start accumulating injuries. But like when you're in your early 20s and stuff like that, like we were talking before, like you can just destroy your body. You're not going to really injure yourself unless you're doing something really dumb. But now I'm a lot more reserved, not dumping bars every time or not like squatting until my nose bleeds as much anymore.
And have you come to a consensus for yourself, at least, like any general rules? Like do you hold off on that failure set until like the final working set of a movement, or do you only allow yourself so many a week, anything like that?
No, it just all depends on how I'm feeling that day. So usually like my compounds won't be taken to like absolute failure, but almost all my accessories I'm doing 1 to 2 sets until failure each of them.
Yeah, right on. And then I'm sure, like you said, it just depends. That will change whether it's pre-contest, deep in the off season, whatever. Tommy, when I pose that topic, what comes to mind for you?
Obviously, I'm a big low volume guy, DC.
Yeah.
I think within that same thing, I took everything to just brutal failure. But so I guess now it's more of, and I think that's necessary. I don't want to make it sound like I've evolved away from that. Like, I think if you're going to be a heavyweight or super heavyweight, you pretty much just need to focus on getting strong until you're like in your upper 20s, maybe even early 30s. And then you can kind of have that epiphany and reflect. And that's where I'm at, is like, all right, how do I keep more tension on the muscle from the start of the rep to the end of the rep and then back through? So I started paying attention more to like my end ranges, like in a press. Because a lot of times I'd get more weight, but I'd be bouncing it out of the bottom a little more as I was going up the weight tree. So I'm using less weight now on certain movements, but I like where my control's at a lot better. So I guess my biggest, is controlling the weight you're using. But there's a caveat to that. People want to control like a 25-pound dumbbell. You still have to use enough weight to stimulate the body, your bodybuilder. Like, train like one. Don't train like a pussy in a Pilates class.
Especially on some of these bigger movements, like, behind the scenes, Tommy, I know you and I kind of send different influencer videos or people that we might know, different videos back and forth, where I just can't help but laugh at some of these guys that, want to put a 10-pound plate on the end of a barbell and, do barbell rows. And it's like, what, they're squeezing it, they're going extra slow. And it's like, motherfucker, throw some weight on there and stretch your back apart. Like, you're not gonna, like, there's so much surface area to cover, there's so much room to grow on somebody's back. And if your back is a weakness, like, I get wanting to feel it, I get having mind muscle connection, but there's a time and a place for everything. Like, if you're gonna barbell row, I think about that being like a power movement near the front of a workout, where it's like, I'm doing this for some overload. Like, I'm not isolating. I need this to grow my entire back, top to bottom. And, you know, if you have any appreciable amount of muscle on you, it's going to take a good amount of load to do that. Now, if you need movements later on in the workout, whether it's cables, machines, things that are set up to really feel it and squeeze it, I think all that stuff's great. But I'm with you, man. It's funny to see, or even like, you know, a bread and butter movement like the leg press. Like we see guys that are in a similar place to us in their bodybuilding journey, and they're doing like a set with both legs that has a 25-pound plate on each side of a leg press. And it's like, dude, I see handicapped people in the gym that do this. Like, what are we doing? But yeah, I'm with both of you guys. I think learning to be more efficient with, like, you know, like more accurate with your training is generally a good thing, especially after you've spent years kind of slugging away at some heavy shit and you kind of earn your stripes, so to speak. I think that's a big thing that's been lost.
I think it's
And I
important for longevity is the biggest thing, because
yeah,
I was starting to rack up some significant tweaks and injuries that I was having to alter my training for anyway. So
yeah,
that's probably what stimulated my reflection and kind of ultimately getting away from push pull legs as like, I mean, that's what I did for years after DC. So I guess too, I could say that I'm not as big on like high frequency of body parts. I still will hit something twice a week, but it's more in phases. Like I don't think everything needs to be hit twice a week once you've packed on enough muscle. So for me right now, I hit chest twice a week and I have back being hit twice a week, but like that's it. I'm not hitting biceps 3 days a week. I'm not hitting, you know, my delt. They're getting indirect work on the other body parts, but legs is just once a week. And I think there'll be a point where that changes, but with push-pull legs, you know, everything was getting hit every 5 days for me. And it just, when you're younger and you need that stimulus and the meat and potatoes, and just to get strong, which is all I cared about, I think there's merit to running that split till the wheels fall off. That's why it kills me when some of my younger guys like ask me for new workouts, because I'm like, why? Have you added 2 plates aside to your deadlift? No, then just keep deadlifting. That's all. I mean, it's just a very different time, because that's all I cared about for probably 8 years was just getting strong.
yeah. And it resulted in a big physique that looked like you could lift heavy shit off the floor. Like you can always pick that out. Like I saw a guy yesterday in the gym, you know, in the crowd of 5'8", 170-pound kids that are usually there. And then there was a guy like around, you know, Tommy, around our size. And it's like, oh shit, like this guy looks like he's been yanking heavy shit off the floor for years. I do think though, to your point, you know, like Joey, we were talking off air where it's almost like you have to be, when you really love to train, like you almost have to be forced into taking rest days or, you know, finding a new approach, whatever the case is. That was the same thing for me in terms of like finally realizing after you smash your head through the wall so many times and get hurt so many times that it's like, okay, I can't just do this forever. And it brings me back to a line that you gave us one of the times that you were on previously, Joey, where you said everything works, but nothing works forever.
Yep.
I get that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure to some degree we've all come to that point. Now, Joey, for you, have you reached a point where there are things like in terms of volume that you've changed your approach on? Like, when you were moving like heavier weights, was it always low volume, and then have you progressed to more volume stuff after you've kind of built the clay, so to speak?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it all depends on the body part. So
Sure.
stuff for like quads has always been high volume for me. And then like
Yeah.
delts, rear delts, and arms has always been like a higher volume. And then chest and back, or I felt responded to a lower volume and a higher intensity, at least, and like hamstrings, at least for me.
Yeah.
But as far as like that progressing, like now, like Tommy's getting away from frequency as to where I feel like I need that for a lot of my lagging body parts. So specifically like arms and shoulders is one thing like that just has a really hard time growing. So I feel like I have to nail it more, because I was doing push pull legs and my lower body, chest, and my back were just getting so much more dominant. So now that's where I'm kind of at as far as like this next phase of training I'm about to go into.
Yeah. And have you put that into action yet? Do you feel like it's worked?
Yeah, my arms have
Any drawbacks?
significantly. It's just not as fun. Like, I mean, you're not able to like smash those body parts every time,
Yeah.
but it's like, it is getting the job done.
Yeah. Yeah, not to make this about me, but I noticed the same thing. Like all of us, I did mostly push pull legs or some variation for a long time. And then it's like every time I got on stage, arms were no good, delts were no good. And I got to a point where I'm like, man, these body parts are almost never sore. Like I got for the majority of this off season since last time I competed, I did my arms somewhere from 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah,
And then
that's where
like
I'm at.
I taped them the other day, and for the first time ever, they're beyond 20 inches. And I get people now that ask me, like, how do you grow big arms? It's like, oh man, like for 10 years, I was looking for the answer. And, in my own circumstance, that was it. It was frequency. Now, like you said, you have to find what movements. Tommy, we talked about this, where like, hammer curls is a perfect example where you can move a lot of weight and those same muscles get beat up pretty good when you're training back. Like you're gonna run into a wall sooner than later if you're gonna try and hit something like that 3 or 4 times a week. Yeah, I've had a similar experience. So are you gonna do anything with your food? I know you're always high food, but when you're training arms, is that like, are you pushing food higher on the days that include arms or any of these other techniques that we see?
I just eat what's on the plan. If it doesn't change or if it's
Yeah.
not specified, then it's that. So right now it's like every day is the same. Besides, I get like one refeed day during the week. I
Okay.
think it's like Wednesday, and then like one
Okay.
off meal.
Okay. Right on. And is that so? How is that? How are you structuring the arms then? Is it after a bigger session, like or are you gonna have an arm day?
So if I hit chest, then I'm hitting 2 tricep exercises and 1 bicep, and then on back
Hmm.
I'll hit 2 bicep and 2 tricep, and
Oh,
then
right
same
on.
thing for like
Okay.
shoulders, and then I'll usually add like 1 or 2 arm workouts on leg day.
Okay. Right
Yeah,
on. Yeah, I mean, for you too, I think about it like your legs are so insane. Like that is probably a pretty decent spot to add some arm work. Cause at this,
yeah,
man, I know you said you've always done high volume for legs, but are you still doing super high volume like for your quads? Do you feel like you need it?
yeah. Just because I think it's fun. I know I don't need it, but it's like I just love doing legs. So it's like if I can damage my
Yeah.
quads as much as possible, if they're gonna grow regardless of what I do.
Yeah.
So I just keep it where it's at.
Then you got to keep the Instagram moniker, right? So it's like
Yeah,
you got to
yeah,
live up to
exactly.
the
If I can't keep my
Business.
handle, then
Business.
No, we've talked about it on this show where it's like, man, it's open bodybuilding. If you have a freak body part, there's no reason to turn your back on it.
Yeah.
And yours are awesome. So I'm all for it. What else, guys? Anything else in terms of like philosophy, or it could be a training technique in the gym, maybe not even just like a big zoomed out picture, an exercise that you've changed your mind on. I mean, personally, I've changed my opinion on how deadlifts fit into a bodybuilding program probably 4 times over the last 4 years.
Yeah. So with like deadlifts, I'll go through like stints to where like, cause I've always wanted like a 750, 800 pound deadlift. And then
Yeah.
obviously after I snap my back, that's probably never going to happen. So I've been focusing on like not so many hinging movements because my lower back is highly developed from injuring
Yeah.
it in high school. I had to rehab it. And it just made my lower back so thick. So I
Yeah.
kind of stay away from those. Like if I'm doing rows, either cable or chest supported. So yeah, definitely I'm not so big into deadlifts anymore, even though I still love them.
What about when you're programming for a client though? Like, let's say you get a guy 24 years old, he wants to be as big as humanly possible. How do you see that? And what variation are you using? Like, will you put conventional deadlifts into a guy's plan, or is it always an RDL?
No, so I'll throw conventional deadlifts in. It'll go through phases. So through one phase, they'll work
Yeah.
on like RDLs or rack pulls, and then they'll work their way down, just depending on how I see like their first deadlifts move. And then if they
Yeah.
need some work, then I back them off.
Right on.
So, but if they're already like have a good deadlift, have good form, then each phase will be different. One phase will be RDLs, and then the next phase will be deadlifts, and they'll switch
Yeah.
back and forth. But it's always from
Yeah.
the floor.
Yeah. Tommy, what about you exercise wise? I know you've recently gotten back to squats.
Yeah, squatting's fucking hard, man. I like the challenge, but god damn, it's hard. Um, I like the safety bar more than the barbell. It's a better center of gravity, and I don't even really have to hold on to it. You can just keep your fingers here and just kind of balance it.
Mhm.
But same thing. I mean, if I got given like 6 months to live, I would just focus on pulling a 900 pound or some sort of absurd number. And I still have like a desire to try that, but I know Dom would be pissed if I tried it. And then it just wouldn't be smart because of the CNS smashing it would take to like do that. But there's that desire to see how much I could pull one time. But I think I've changed my mind at like back to like different ways to keep progressive overload. The main thing is, you know, tempo and just changing things up. So some sets, especially for arms, I'll do like, you know, there's a set of in our arm day where I do bicep curls, I think PIRCHER, and it's like a 5 count negative and a 5 count ascent or a concentric. I'll do that for 5 reps and then I'll just blast out 5 fast reps. And then I'll go superset that with something else. So a lot of tempo stuff. There's rear delt stuff where I'll do, you know, I'll hold the pause for a 5 count. There's cable fly stuff where I'll hold the stretch. I'll start at 12 and I'll do a set of 12, and each rep I'm pulling off 1 second per rep. So like the last rep's only a 1 count hold, but you've already built up all that tension from 12 to 1. So just different stuff like that to like, all right, this is bodybuilding. What's moving the weight? Is it inertia? Is it momentum? Am I shifting my shoulders up to get out of the stretch and then getting it back to pec? That's some of the stuff I've been like looking into, is like my movement patterns, and I'll say biomechanics, but I'm not like nerdy about it. Like I still am training hard and focused on training hard, but it's like, again, I think the biggest question I always ask myself now is what's moving the weight? And I watch my training partner's 10 years younger than me. I watch him just more weight, more weight, more weight. And that's good. I never tell him otherwise. He's supposed to train like that. That's
Right.
how you do it. You get as strong as you can. If you want to fucking curl 60-pound dumbbells, do it. You don't have the tendonitis I have yet. So do it until you earn that. And then you got to back it down. And me, it's like, man, 35-pound dumbbell curls is like as high as I need to go because I can keep it right in the bicep. But I think just staying fluid and staying open. For me, I like rowing in the Smith machine, but it doesn't mean I won't barbell row. I would say I still think when it comes to clients, when we were coming up, there wasn't as many machines that are as sexy as there are now, and there definitely wasn't like the brand horniness there is now. Like, oh, you got Arsenal, Prime, Nautilus, blah, Atlantis. It's like, yeah, they're all great pieces. Like each brand brings its own strengths and weaknesses. But at the same time, I mean, Joey, we're from the same state. You've been to the same shithole gyms I have. Like, you got a barbell and weights? I'm good. Like, here's my membership. Give me a membership.
Yeah.
So I
the
still
old school
think
machines anyways.
yeah, I think young guys and girls are they almost look at free weights as like VCRs or disc player, like CD players. And it's like, man, that's the real shit though. Like, I think that's what builds true physiques is free weights. I'm not saying machines don't have a place, but if you're somebody who's never had a barbell in your hand or real dumbbells, or you know what I mean, like that's going to show in your physique.
Yeah, the density is just not the same if you only use machines or if you stay away from free
stabilize weight. Like different, all those body parts matter when it comes to a press or a row or a deadlift or a squat. Everything's working. And I've heard Tom Platz go off on rants about this. He just says like the physiques just look like they're bigger, but they're like softer. And it's because they're not being forced to stabilize the weight.
Yeah, it's almost like it's like an artificial size. Like it's almost like not functional. Like you were saying, like, man, like if you get to a point where you can overhead or incline press dumbbells that are over 100 pounds, like, yes, like your shoulder stability in that plane is going to be good. But then I firmly believe that shoulder stability then leads to you being able to contract your back better, like contract your side delts and rear delts better, like, you know, stabilize that shoulder joint while you're doing curls. Like I had to go through my own journey like that, where I did almost exclusively machines because I got to a point where I was like, man, these free weights, I train too much with an ego with them and I keep getting hurt. So then I moved almost exclusively to machines and things grew, but then it's like I completely lost my ability to stabilize my own body on its own. So then I realized the value in that by having to put separate work in just to gain that ability back. And Joey, like you said, man, those you get on stage, man, you go to a bodybuilding show and you see the guys that have trained hard with real heavy weights, like free weights and heavy weights. Like there's just no mistaking it. Like conditioning looks different on a guy that has built his physique with serious lifts. Like a lot of times, man, there are guys, it seems like every now and again, I'll be at a show and I'll see somebody and I'm like, man, that motherfucker, it might not be the prettiest physique, but I'm like, geez, this guy's brutal looking. And then afterwards, you see him on Instagram and the guy was a power lifter for 8 years before he decided to do bodybuilding. And it's like, yeah, it makes sense. So what about anything maybe in bodybuilding itself? Has your philosophy shifted? So I'll give you an example, and I'll start the round table on this. Personally, for me, I have kind of absorbed and looked at the period after a show like from 4 or 5 different perspectives over my time. Like where, at one point I thought it was like this magical time, and then, all respect to him, I appreciate what he's contributed, but I worked under John Jewett for a long time, and John speaks very black and white about things and says, this is factual. And one of his things that he really puts out is that, post show, you're not building new muscle. Like it's all about getting healthy. Don't push things. It's all about getting healthy. And I've kind of gotten back to somewhat of a middle ground. I wouldn't necessarily call it magic, but time and time again, we see some of the craziest transformations in bodybuilding of actual muscle tissue and stage tissue coming from guys that really push the envelope in that post-show period. If your health can facilitate it. And it's funny to me because, not to call him out, but John is one of those guys. John went from a middleweight at USA's and 1 year later won the heavyweight at USA's. So skipped an entire weight class because he pushed things hard after a show. And right now I'm working with Justin Harris, and he does it. Go look at his page. He's done it time and time again with guys. Where, like somebody like George Cooper, for example, he watches the show. Another guy that was a power lifter, went to bodybuilding. We critiqued George's physique recently, and he put on 33 pounds of stage weight in 1 year and was in better condition at the heavier body weight. So, man, that's something for me. I've started to take another hard look at how I think about things and what I say to people, especially clients, because there must be something to it. I don't think there's magic to it. The guy on the other end of it still has to be doing the work and nailing it. And it might even be more difficult of a time period for certain guys in terms of reeling the food in or staying on plan because you don't have that show in sight. But if you can, man, I think the benefits are enormous. Like, especially if your health wasn't completely in shambles, if you can afford to leave some PEDs in and really push the food, really push the training after your show, maybe 8-10 weeks, you might put on everything you need to put on in an off season in that time period. As crazy as that sounds, I wouldn't be saying this if I didn't see it time and time again.
Yeah, well, you have to think of what happens. Like, if you're actually in stage condition and you're fucking shredded, your body wants to absorb that food. It wants to take in that food. It wants to refeed. So as long as you don't go after your show and just eat like shit and gain a bunch of bad weight, like you're going to be putting on muscle if you're still training hard. Yeah. So like when I get into off season or like when I'm post show, like my training intensity doesn't change. Like food goes up and we take advantage of it. Like we never really kept anything. Like I'll bridge. I'll do like MK, IGF, stuff like that to help. Yeah. But you want to take advantage of your body just like super compensating essentially because you've been depleted and prep for so long. Right. Yeah. So I think a lot of people just get caught up mentally. Like they almost use food as a reward. Right. And they haven't had anything for so long. So they want to keep eating like shit. And that'll ultimately just detriment that rebound phase. And you'll just be fat by the end of it.
Yeah. If you mess it up, you'll be fat in 4 weeks. And then you might have to spend a good chunk of your off season pulling some of that off. Exactly. So there's a fine line there, but the guys that nail it, like we talked about, man, can make crazy progress. Tommy, you're going through it right now.
Yeah, I mean, Dom just posted it up 35 pounds in 8 weeks, and I still have lines in my glutes. So,
Yeah.
and it's not. I don't like the slow reverse shit. There's the goal is just to not get stupid fat, but it is by no
Right.
means is it a snail's race to like let's
Right.
put on 2 pounds a week. Like, no, I want 15 fucking pounds on in less than 2 weeks so I can have some leverage in my training again and I can
Yes.
train. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be prep dry in the fucking gym anymore. I've had enough of that shit. I want to grow, I want to train because that's the most fun for all of us is the training.
Yeah.
So this whole like 1 to 2 pound gain per week, I've never even heard Dom mention the word rate of gain. He just gave me a diet and it was funny because I remember I gained 7 pounds in a week and he upped the food.
Yes.
And I gained another 7 and he upped the food again. It's like, that taught
Yes.
me something about a rebound. It's like, we're not trying to control this and like slow grow it. We want to fucking push it because I wasn't getting fat. I was like
Yeah.
good quality growth.
Man, social media, I'm so glad that you brought up that exact topic. Social media has taken that very thing and almost turned it into like a bizarre eating disorder dick measuring contest online where people love to post like 3 weeks post show and I'm only 4 pounds up from my stage weight. Well, then you wasted fucking 3 weeks. Like your dick isn't
Yeah.
working and your training still sucks. So
Go get
what
it,
are we
buddy.
doing? Like, what was the point of this? Like I see all this stuff and it's like, if your prep was brutal or you were just on the gas in terms of PEDs, or maybe you're just one of these people that you don't have the genetics to handle drugs and your health takes a beating from prep. Okay, 6 or 8 weeks where you're not slamming food like because you don't have the PEDs in to help partition it. But like this shit where it's 1 or 2 pounds a week, like man, you could do everything right and like be up, like you said, Tommy, 15 pounds in 10 days or something after. Like if you were super peeled on stage and maybe there was a water manipulation or diuretics in, like you have to take all of that into account. Like you were at an unsustainably low body weight when you weighed in or whatever your prep low was. Like that is just not productive. And I think some of these coaches that are talking about this post show period of just like slow rate of gain, it's all about getting healthy, like all this stuff, like you're kind of missing the mark on a huge part of the bodybuilding season. Like getting super lean sets you up, like you said, Joey, to like soak the food up. And also it's a great time to capitalize on how motivated you are after a show. Like I never needed these people that take a week, a month off after a show. I never understood that, man. Like almost every time I've been on stage, I looked at the pictures and was like, nope, I'm still not awesome. So I cannot wait to get back in the gym on Monday. So I think that's just a great time. Like, and if, like I said, I do think if your health allows it, it's not a bad time to keep like a modest amount of PEDs in just to help partition some of that food because you will look different.
Dorian talked about it. He said he would keep going for another 6 weeks post show and then
Yeah.
chill or cruise or take his time off. But I mean, since 2017, I've kept PEDs in at a high dose post show. I don't go to this 200 milligrams of test. Now again, it's to each their own. I always have my blood work continues to improve. My blood pressure's better now than it was 30 pounds ago. So keep all that in line, but also like remember this is still bodybuilding.
Right. Yeah, I've said this before and I give credit to him, but like, Justin Harris has said this where it's like kind of in response to all the social media stuff, staying lean all year, gaining 1 pound a week after a show. It's like your job, the second that show ends and the second you come off stage, your job is to be the biggest human that you could possibly be. Now that's within the parameters of your plan and having a coach set up a plan for you. Like Joey said, you don't want to just turn into a fat ass 3 or 4 weeks after your show because you'll ruin it. You'll ruin the whole off season. but I think we have gotten away from people thinking like that. And not to sit on like a soapbox, but we see it like people, there's not a lot of people that just set out to be as big as they possibly can. So then you get these guys that are worried about, keeping all 6 abs all year round. And it's like, man, you're going to look the same the next time you get on stage.
Yeah, there's very few people who can stay lean in their offseason and make massive changes. Like, well, at least decently lean. For the most part, you're gonna have to bulk and get like a tad bit sloppy to make detrimental gains for the next year. If you want to gain 10 pounds of muscle, you're not doing it by staying lean.
Right. Like if you're talking bigger than you've ever been, like a new level of big,
Yep.
Then the additional weight, like if you've only ever been 250 and then now you walk around at 265, that the time period that you spent going from 250 to 265 isn't going to be the prettiest. But guess what? You're not getting on stage like that. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have lines in your glutes. It doesn't matter if you have your lower abs dug out down to your cock. Like it doesn't make a difference. You just need to be bigger and then walk around holding it like that.
Yeah, it's always going to come off during prep, but I think people get obviously body dysmorphia and people have like self-esteem issues. So they're scared to get fat, and then they don't want to post in their off season because they're not shredded. Their veins aren't popping. It's like just detrimenting yourself, that's all it is. But that's all a product of social media.
It's a product of social media. There's a lot of people like us that make a living in part to how they look or post on social media.
But I think where's the fear? Like, I just the fear of fat. People fear that like it's like this disease that you can't like it has no cure. It's like,
and also if you've been ripped, you've shown that you have the tools to get it off again. That's
right.
Like losing the fat is the easiest part of the whole process.
But when I was younger, there was no limit on what like a bulk or like, I just didn't care. Like,
yeah.
And now, especially here, there's like one of my buddies has I think he's 16 and this kid's just terrified to eat. And he's like, he gets his body fat measured. And I'm like, dude, you should be going to KFC on 3 days of the week. And then the other 4, you should be going to McDonald's or just, you know what I mean? Like Golden Corral, all you can eat buffet every set. Like these are the things you should be thinking, like not rice cakes and fucking protein shakes.
I mean, it might be controversial, but look at that kid, Sam Sulek. He's a perfect example of it. That kid's 21 years old and trains like an animal. And look at the way he eats. Look at his physique. Like he's not worried about this shit. Like he talks about it like when it's time to bulk, like he's doing 5,500 plus calories of however really he gets it in. Make sure he gets his protein in. He's 21 years old. He's in college. It might be fucking ramen, whole chocolate milk, like all this other shit. Like if you're around that age or younger, like in your example, Tommy, your buddy that you're talking about, 16 years old, like, dude, just pack it in, pack the food in and just be a bigger person.
Yeah. You should be carrying like bagels on your person at all times and just fucking
eating
bagels.
I tell everyone PB&Js.
Yeah,
like that's a Jay Cutler. That's a Jay Cutler thing.
Dusty put those in my meal plan at one point. 2 PB&Js every night.
There you go.
I remember listening to that. I remember Jay Cutler saying that Chris Aceto sent him, not sent him a meal plan, wrote a diet on a fucking piece of notebook paper and gave it to him. And it was like in between the 8 meals a day that he was eating, it was here, have a peanut butter and jelly and a glass of milk. Like, man, that might not necessarily turn you into Jay Cutler, but it's going to make you a bigger person.
Yeah, that's what I did in high school to bulk for football. Every other hour of class, I would have a PB&J.
What's one non-negotiable you have now that you would tell your younger self to have as a bodybuilder?
Discipline. I had none when I was younger.
Yeah, I could.
In what regard? Like with food, you had none?
Yeah. Oh, I was. Yeah, when I was younger, I was fat.
I'll give you an example. Mine would be eat your vegetables, because I had coaches tell me to eat them, and I was just like, nope, skip, and then do cardio.
Yeah.
No matter what weight class I was at, I think you should be doing 4 to 6 days of cardio because there's just too many benefits.
Oh man, I think the one thing that I can think of that I think right now I would be sitting here as a better tangible bodybuilder than I am if I told myself this 8 or 9 years ago. It would have been to only use whey protein in like a pinch or emergency situation,
Yeah.
and shove whole food as like a fucking religious tactic, like whole foods only.
Yeah, I was a pussy about that shit too. Like 8 ounces of chicken or 2 scoops away, and I would always choose the
Easy
whey.
decision. Easy
Yeah.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I
Like
never
you
had it
said.
would be like post training. Even when I was younger, like I loved eating so much. I was like, why the fuck would I want to drink my calories? I'd
Yeah.
rather just eat and taste it.
See, that's the two ends of the spectrum. Like for me, the eating has always been like I would rather starve in contest prep. In terms of what's easier, I would rather starve in contest prep.
How was prep for you, Joey? Are you just like hungry 20 weeks out?
Yeah, my hunger is pretty high, but I don't know. I just don't even try to think about it. I just try to stay busy.
What
Yeah.
about 6 weeks out? Is your stomach just eating itself?
We've been so for the few past preps I've been with Dom, we've been feeding into the show. So it's like my food will like actually slowly go up.
Okay.
And then like if we need to like really dig, we'll dig. But for the most part, it's been going up and up like during like going into the show.
Do you have a pretty high food focus in prep or not really?
As far as like mentally, like am I like focused on my food? Like is it but no,
Yeah.
it doesn't bother me. Just like whenever it's time
Damn.
to eat, I just take it down.
Okay. Bodybuilder's bodybuilder. I respect it. Yeah, the eating has always been toughest. So like Tommy said, there's a lot of times, man. And like I didn't always have jobs that were great for bodybuilding. And here I am, I'm still making excuses. 10 years later, I'm making excuses for myself. But I would do whey protein in a bagel or something like that. Like probably way too often. I think I'd literally be sitting here as a bigger, more muscular human if I had just stuck to whole foods. And I think the cardio one is a good one too. For like probably the first 7 years of bodybuilding, like at real bodybuilding, I would just look at cardio as like a contest prep thing. And it would be like cardio, like that just means I have to eat more. Like, what the fuck?
Yep, I thought about it that way too. Is like I need every calorie, as if like
Yeah.
you're not enough as a surplus without like you can't 200 calories worth of cardio.
Or
That's
probably less. Like you're not in a chronic surplus.
yeah, like my philosophy with that has always been like the more I work, the more I can eat. So it's like if
That's
I'm doing more cardio, if I'm training fucking harder, like I can just eat more food and grow.
Yeah.
See, I
think
I thought I needed to be like an absolute fucking bag of shit and just sit on
Me
my
too.
ass all day.
Me too. I don't know if it might have been Rich Piana, or I could have sworn I heard Dusty say this in a video and it stuck with me far too long. But somebody that I looked up to at one point said in a video, a lazy bodybuilder is a good bodybuilder. And I took that to heart far too kindly.
That sounds
I
like
heard that. I heard that
Yeah.
and I was like, a lazy bodybuilder is a good bodybuilder. Well, I'm about to be the best.
Say no more.
The one thing I think it was Sergio who said it. He's like, the more boring my life is, the better bodybuilder I'm going to be.
I agree with that.
That one I can agree with. Yeah.
Especially
that was the
coming
one thing
from
I've
him.
taken.
Especially coming from him, his world is always filled with drama and chaos, I feel like. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Jay just had a good, I saw a YouTube short, he called it a boxy lifestyle. Like if it didn't fit in the box, it wasn't in his life. And I'm like, that is why you ascended the way you did, because, back then they didn't have the convenience factor of the meal prep companies and like the things we do now, the things he even takes advantage of. Like I saw something where he said he cracked like 140 eggs a day because he didn't do
He
like
got a
just to
ton
take
of
the egg
egg
whites
whites,
out?
right? Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think the other
And
thing that Jay said
there was way
too.
less restrictions too. Oh, go ahead, Joey.
Oh yeah. The one thing that Jay said too that like really stick is like I had to learn this during prep. It was like if you're coming to me with negative shit, just like cut it off. He's like, if you're calling me with your problems, like just don't even bother.
Yeah.
So like when I get into prep, like that's it, like emotionally, like kind of shutting off and like, all right, there's no negative energy allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing for a lot of people. There's a lot of people. I think that's a great non-negotiable for life, period. Like there's a lot of people that have shitty people in their life that, it's a parent, it's a best friend they've had since second grade, it's this, it's that, like where there's a guilt factor to cutting them off. But deep down, you know, like if you cut that person off, your life is going to be better, your contest prep or whatever is going to be better. So I mean, Tommy, I think one of our first episodes that we did, it was on something like that, like relationships in bodybuilding or what the non-negotiables were. And you were talking about having just a zero tolerance policy for it.
Oh yeah, relationships, job, and finances. Make sure all three are in a good spot to start a prep.
Yep.
Yep.
And if they're not, don't start the prep or fix it.
Right.
I think mental
Or-
state should be like kind of at the hierarchy of that.
It's
Yeah.
gotta be. It's gotta be. And those three things, if they're not like it, all of those three contribute to your mental state. Like if one of those even is out of whack, it's gonna drag your mental state down. And then you almost just have to accept that the final product on stage is not going to be as good as it could be.
Yep.
And then once you master that, you master how to do it in a prep. The next step is to transitioning to being all year. Like
All
it just
the
doesn't, it just doesn't stop. And then there really is no like big, I'm starting prep. It's just like,
Yeah.
we added 5 minutes of cardio and took away a free meal. That's my prep start.
This
you
is
guys
going to be
hear
the
that
first
beeping or
time.
no?
What's
No.
that?
Can you guys hear that beeping or no?
I can't.
Okay,
no.
good. Okay. Yeah,
Tommy,
my
like
washer's
you
like out of
said-
balance, so it just like beeps.
Oh shit!
I didn't know if you
No,
guys
you're
could.
good. Tommy, this is the first time in my life that I'm about to have that, like you said, like where I've just everything has just been in all the same. There's been no outside stressors that I need to cut out. My life for the first time, like in terms of working for myself, all this stuff is just set up to bodybuild all the time. So I'm looking forward to it because, like you said, even if it was with cardio, this is the first time I've really consistently kept cardio in. Like cardio was just like, oh, like that signifies the beginning of contest prep. Like day one on the stairs, like time to get shredded. But I think I would have been better in the long run, and my health would have been better. You might be able to push more or longer on PEDs if your health is good all year doing cardio. So, and I think even like when you're pushing a lot of food, one, it's going to help your appetite, your digestion, and it's going to partition the food better. Not to get dorky on us, but like you are going to look better. If you take two guys, all things are exactly the same, genetics, all this other things, training, same food, same PEDs. One guy does 4 cardios a week, the other guy does none. That guy that's doing 4 cardios a week is probably going to look better than the guy that did none in the off season. And then that sets him up to have a better, smoother contest prep. So yeah, those are good. The non-negotiables that I would have told myself, that's a good question.
Yeah, the other like thing to that cardio, if you never stop it, when you start prep, it doesn't seem as like brutal.
Yeah.
Like everyone like they'll dumb down their cardio during their off season. And then when they go to prep, it's like if your coach fucking ramps it up first, you're gonna be in for like a rude awakening. Then
Yeah.
it's gonna be 10 times worse, especially if they strip off a bunch of fat right in the beginning. Like food's going down, cardio's going up, and then it's just like a bigger stressor on your body. It's just slowly just like tapering it.
Yeah, I think then you just have less to put towards training. And then it's
Yeah,
like, well, what
exactly.
keeps the muscle then? Like the training keeps the muscle. So if that is going to take if that's going to take a hit because you have to pull a bunch of excess body fat off by slamming yourself with cardio right away, again, I just don't think that's going to set you up for the best final product on stage. That's a great point. And then I think for me, at least, just to keep the conversation going, one other thing that I have definitely had varied viewpoints on, and I think I'm back to kind of where I originally am. And I think I might have talked about it on here. I don't remember, but I think I'm back in on lightly reverse banded hack squats. Now, this is just within my own context. Joey's shaking his head. Some of like that, I've been there. I've been slamming on the desk, like, why the fuck would anyone do this? But when I look back at it, it's the best stretch of growth that I had in my legs outside of like, your original 3-5 years, whatever, was on like a lightly banded reverse hack squat. And my knees were the healthiest they ever were, and my quads grew more than they ever had. And I'm kind of back there now, just at the mercy of what my knees can handle. is that to say at 21, do I think you should, like, you know, of course we see kids, Joey, you're shaking your head, I'm sure, because we see kids online all the time that abuse the fuck out of it. They put 2 double wide bands on it so that they can put 10 plates aside on it and, you know, free fall it to the floor and then bounce it back up. You know, I don't think that has a place. And I think if you're not injured and let's say less than 25 or 26, probably no point at all. Like, own the stretch part of it, pause the stretch part of it at the bottom. But I've gotten to a point where my knees just don't bounce back the same anymore in terms of recovery. And I've started to put it back in, and it just makes a world of difference for me. Like, I can get the hard sets that I need to get in. I can get the volume in that I need to get in. And it just doesn't do near the damage that it does if I don't band it. And like, I have other things in that I'm loading the stretch part of it too. Like, I do a leg press that has bands to add tension to it. So it's like, I'm not skipping out. I don't view that. I don't view it like I'm skipping out on the hard stuff. That's my individual context. Of course, there's people that are going to abuse it, but that's where I'm at with it right now. Tell me why I'm wrong.
It's not that you're like wrong. I just think like, so when you're reverse banding that, like, your hips and glutes don't get the same amount of stress. So ultimately, like, if you don't do that forever and you go back to a normal hack squat and get to full depth, your hips and glutes you're not going to be able to fire out of the bottom as effectively.
Yeah.
That's my thing. Like, the only reason I've ever reverse banded anything was to do like 150% of my 1 rep max. So like the lightning method for powerlifting. That's the only time I've ever done it. Other than that, like, I'm banding exercises or trying to make it harder.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing you see on social media that I keep seeing people do is like, they're using knee wraps with reverse bands. I'm like, you motherfuckers, like, are you kidding me? Like, there's one thing to do the reverse band, but if you're adding like the knee wraps on top of it, it's like, well, all right, what are you really doing?
Joey,
Take
what's your
both of those off
perspective
and you're going to be doing 2
on knee
plates.
wraps, period, in bodybuilding?
I mean,
Think
I
they have
use
a
them just, I have
place?
arthritis
Oh,
in
you
both
do?
my knees. Yeah.
Okay, so that's
So I'll
okay.
use knee
So we're
wraps for like
talking
my
we're
top
talking injury
sets.
workaround. Yeah.
Yeah. So for my top sets, I'm using knee wraps.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't touch them.
Yeah. No, that's my same point for why I'm using the reverse band.
Yeah, and that's why I said like, you weren't wrong
Yeah.
by any means.
Yeah.
It's just,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you on the reasoning. Like, if I was healthy, I probably wouldn't be using it.
yeah.
But to me, the same way you look at reverse bands, I feel like I look at knee wraps as just like, what are we doing in bodybuilding, at least?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to get strong, or you want to put up big numbers, you're powerlifting, strongman, any of these things, by all means. I don't know if this is like bro science or what, but I just feel like you're teaching the knee not even to stabilize for itself in those end ranges. And I just, like, I never had knee issues and I never used wraps. So it was like, man, why would I ever use these? Because
Yeah.
I see kids, like you said, I see kids that wrap up, and it's like, I see kids wrapping up for like a set of leg press and they don't even bury it. And it's like, man, what is the point of this?
Yeah. Like, I've been to that point already where I was squatting 6 plates without knee wraps. And then just got to the point where like my knees just like could not handle anymore. I'm still very stable and the bottom end ranges can pause, but just the knee wraps kind of just take a little bit of that pressure off my knees.
Yeah. Now sleeves, I think they have a place. I think there's way less spring for it, but it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah, I've never knee wrap or knee sleeves never fit me right, so I never wore them. I tried them like 1 or 2 times, and there's not enough compression at at least the knee.
Yeah. What about you? You ever use any of this stuff, Tommy? You ever use wraps or sleeves?
I wear sleeves. I have Iron Rebel sleeves that I've probably been wearing for 4 years. I like them. I mean, I only wear them for work sets. I know some people put them on at the start of leg day. Dante and Dusty taught me to, get that blood flow to your leg without them. And then they kind of act like wraps because mine are kind of hard to get on.
Yeah.
Because as you grow, you might have to size up, but as long as I can get it over my knee, I like that spring effect out of the bottom. But I don't use the spring effect to create like a bungee cord. But
you're still controlling it.
They keep my knees nice and warm. I've had a partial torn patellar tendon, so PRP sealed that up. For me, knee issues is figuring out what caused it, and for me it's unstable hips. So I'm actually working with some people on like just brutal FRC stretches, stuff that I'm not even like, I'm familiar with it, but it's not my wheelhouse. So I'm just having people like actually, they're training me and my training partner on this stuff for like an hour every Saturday, starting, I think, in a couple weeks. And I'm just going to bulletproof my hips because I think I just saw a post from Scott Stevenson about how he's having, I think, bilateral hip replacement this week. And it's just 40 years of beating himself up that pretty much led to it, but it's also hereditary. And, you know, my dad's got a bad hip. My mom's got a bad hip. So I think there's a genetic component. And like, you know, we've had Matt Crispin and Nick Chan on, and like, you only get one set of joints, you know what I mean? So if you're not prioritizing this stuff, take care of them. I think that's, you know, I didn't do any of that when I was younger. I'm sure none of us did, but I did the reverse banding too. Dusty and I did it for a long time. The key word that you said, Joe, is lightly. You know, I can 3 seconds of seeing how someone has something banded and their physique, I can decide if it's needed or not. Like, oh, you have the band, the Elite FTS band that literally takes off 270 pounds of tension. I don't even know. I don't want to talk to you at that point. Is it the small fucking orange one or the red one, or is it the thick?
Yeah.
So
generally, I think as a guideline, like if anyone's listening to this and they wanted to experiment with it, or if they're wondering if they're doing it right, I feel like as a general guideline, it should be either entirely or like borderline slack when you stand to the top. Like if the machine is just racked and it's pulling tense, it's fucking way too heavy, because now you're just getting help through the entire range of motion. Like the band is doing half of the work.
yeah, the band should be loose at the top.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
It should be pliable. And if it's not, your mechanism of your setup it's designed to make you stronger than you actually are.
Yeah.
On the opposite end of that, if you're banding it like the opposite way, like you're banding it to make it harder, there shouldn't be any slack at the bottom. That's the biggest mistake I see people like doing like pendulum squats and stuff like that, just with how it moves. As soon as they get all the way to the bottom, like all the tension's released. It's like, no, that's not what that's for.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, banding it from the bottom, in essence.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Banding it from the bottom, in essence, does the same thing. It just is a different end result. I almost think that one might be better, because you'd end up having to use less actual poundage. Like if you banded it right, it would be less poundage on your knees. Like, whereas on that reverse band, you almost end up needing more weight than you even normally would use.
Yeah. So you're still getting like a lot more poundage at the top, which I mean, like is the purpose of both of them, right? Yeah. But at the bottom, there's still a little bit of tension. But the weight load isn't the same on your hips and knees, right? But you're still getting that tension where like you're resisted at the hips and glutes.
Yeah.
So they're not getting weakened over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, I did that for a long period. And that was one thing. I almost had no glutes. Like a long period of my quads grew and I had like no glutes. And because of that, it took me longer to look like I was in stage shape. Like I needed to lose more in order to look like I was in stage shape.
Yeah, just because the musculature wasn't there.
There was no muscle. Yeah, I had a fucking pancake ass. Whereas the past 2 years, for the most part, I've done without it, and I've done super deep leg press. And now I'm like, you know, peak off season, my glutes are still like muscular and squared off. So you're totally right. And like if the idea is to build like complete muscular legs, top to bottom, front to back, you're better off just getting strong without them. So all right, guys.
One quick thing, because I wear them. I know you wear the squat shoes. You wear them, Joey?
No, I usually will squat barefoot. Or I just got like these Merrill shoes that they're just like kind of like barefoot shoes. But the squat shoes, I wore them for a little bit and they just killed my knees.
Really?
See, you're probably somebody I've run into this sometimes if I use them too much too. Like you're somebody with the size of your quads and everything. It tells me, and not as a knock, but like your height tells me that you were set up pretty good to grow your quads and get like good knee flexion at the bottom without a wedge or without a heel. Tommy, I look at someone like you, or like my buddy Gary Turner comes to mind, like somebody with longer femurs. And it's like, man, I almost feel like a squat shoe with a wedge is like a prerequisite for you to be able to improve your legs.
Dude, that completely changed the game for me because I used
Yeah.
to just shin splints and then lower back punch from squatting
Yeah.
without them. But
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
I've got
case
as
to
far
case
as even
basis.
squat shoes and a wedge to just
Yeah.
really crank that knee flexion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm somewhere in between. If I use them for all my squatting and leg pressing, I start to run into knee problems, like you were saying, Joey, because it almost gives me too, like I'm almost getting too much knee flexion, I think, if that's even
Yeah.
possible, where it's like I'm coming outside of my active range because I can do a pretty good job of staying upright or getting knee flexion with a flat foot. A lot of times I've used to just train them barefoot. Um, but it depends. It depends on what I'm trying to do and for me, a lot of times I will wear them more so on a leg press because I'm just at the mercy of the angle of the platform and if it's adjustable, if the seat's adjustable or not. Like right now, I'm kind of mainly using that like traditional hammer strength leg press, and that angle isn't great, so I'm wearing them. But uh, yeah, that's one of those things. Like all three of us coach, like that is something that I feel like is a you watch somebody squat or leg press from the side a couple times, and it's almost an immediate thing. Like, man, this guy's going to need wedges, or immediately you can tell that they don't, and they probably already have good quads.
Yeah, I'm not telling like anyone to do this by any means because it's not safe if you don't have like the stability and to control your legs. On the leg press, like I can't just because of my ankle injury, I can't get down that far. So if I put my feet close together, come all the way down, I pop my heels up kind of like a sissy squat.
Yeah,
So
I've done
I'm not
that.
telling anyone to go try it, but I mean, ultimately, if you want to, get rid of that butt wink, it's going to have to happen.
yeah. Well, and that's something too. Like, I hear why you're prefacing it, but like, unless you're an idiot, you're not just going to go put 12 plates aside on a leg press and try that. Like,
Yeah.
start with an empty sled and see how it feels. Like, but that is something that it almost winds up being like one of those like Platt sissy squats.
Yeah. I actually did one of those. So I like a while ago, it was probably like maybe a year and a half on the linear hack squat. I was
Yeah,
doing sissy squats with it to load it. And some guy just like blew me up. Oh, you're teaching people to not get full range of motion and get proper ankle dorsiflexion and something like shut the this guy's obviously never seen a Tom Platz video in his life, but it
right.
was just like that was a good like little addition to my leg, like right at the end.
Without
See, I'm
seeing him
doing
too, I
both.
guarantee you he doesn't have any fucking legs either.
I'm doing the Platt sissy hacks, and we're doing belt squats where we like elevate onto our toes at the bottom too.
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
And
I'll
both,
have to try that one.
well, I mean, they're great. End of the like that's not your main movement, but like do all your heavy work and then do that at the end. Super
Yep.
set with like just body weight sissy squats. Wrecked.
Yep.
All right, guys. I think that's a good spot to wrap it. Joey, always appreciate you coming on, man.
I appreciate
Always
you guys having me.
always love hearing your perspective and the different perspectives you have on training. So that was Joey Cavalier, Tommy Styles, Joseph Percher. This was a Thinking Man's podcast. Until next time, guys, we are out.